I apologize in advance for how I sound in this video. I'm still not 100% after being sick all this week, but I still wanted to try to put out a video for you guys, and this was a topic that I just couldn't pass up. With the MCU's latest upcoming entry, The Marvels, tracking for an atrocious 45 to 50 million opening weekend, it's safe to say that Marvel Studios is in full panic mode. A lack of general interest in the brand is a relatively recent phenomenon that some at the studio level are having a hard time wrapping their heads around. The answer as to why this is all happening is quite simple, actually, but Marvel appears to be responding in the only way that they know how. Just do what worked before again, bring everyone back, and it'll be just like last time. The fact that they don't realize that they have bigger issues creatively is very telling, and a clear-cut sign that things are going to get worse before they get better. Let's discuss.
Our content sucks. Our content sucks.
I watch so you don't have to.
All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
I don't know about everybody else, but I long for the times when things like Easter eggs and cameos were just an added bonus whenever you had them in a movie. Something that we could look forward to as fans in a fun post-credits scene. That would hopefully be a satisfying tease of things to come. At some point, however, Marvel and the MCU started to rely on Easter eggs and cameos a bit too much. So much so that those things took precedence in their films over things like story and character development.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for them.
Look at it this way. If we didn't get that Avengers tease at the end of Iron Man 1, people would still look favorably upon that movie, and it would most likely still be just as beloved as it is to this day. That tease did not make or break that movie, because it was a great story first and foremost. But now, Marvel Studios sells their films on the prospect of who might show up. So much so that they have whatever fans they have left worked up into a frenzy every single time one of these movies comes out. They now say, whatever you do, don't spoil the cameos and Easter eggs in this film, because it will ruin the whole experience for me. If having a cameo spoiled prior to the film's release ruins the entire experience for you, then that movie most likely wasn't that good in the first place.
That makes sense.
But now we've moved into the next phase, or tactic being used by Marvel Studios to try and lure people back to the theaters. Rather than take a long hard look at themselves and try to realize the real reason that people have become disinterested in the MCU, they've now resorted to leaking their own cameos, in hopes that that will be enough to get people interested in a movie that probably isn't worth being interested in anyway. There was a report late last week that the 20th Century Fox version of X-Men's Beast, played by Kelsey Grammer, will make a cameo appearance in the end credits scene for the Marvels. And there's a couple things that I find very interesting about this report, if in fact it does end up being true. For one, Marvel Studios clearly takes their own fan base, or what is left of them, to be complete buffoons if they think that's all they need to do to get people to go watch this film.
Dance, puppets! Dance!
The other part of this is a continuation of a recent trend used by Disney and Marvel Studios, where they bring back incarnations of characters created by other studios. They did it for Spider-Man No Way Home using Sony's Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield Spider-Man, and they are now doing it again with Fox's X-Men cast, reportedly using Beast in the Marvels, and of course using Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman in the upcoming Deadpool 3. What I find most interesting about this is that for years, MCU fanboys have told me that these non-MCU versions of these characters were inferior in every way to what the MCU was doing. Yet now it seems like some of those people are excited to see these characters return in the MCU.
My, how the tables have turned.
It's also kind of ironic that Marvel Studios is lazily trying to restore interest in the MCU by using versions of characters that they had no hand in creating in the first place. Nostalgia is one hell of a drug. I get it. That's been proven many times over. But it's also been proven that modern Hollywood, led by Disney, seem to be incapable of resurrecting these things from the past in satisfying ways. And that has everything to do with their intent. It never feels like they want to do these characters justice, they just want to use them to put butts in seats. It feels very disingenuous, and I think a lot of fans are starting to see through that. And if bastardizing the Fox X-Men, which had a lot better movies than some people like to give it credit for, wasn't enough, there was a report today that Marvel Studios has at least had internal discussions about bringing the original Avengers cast back for another film, including Iron Man and Black Widow, who were of course killed off in Endgame. And their inclusion would reportedly easily be explained thanks to the multiverse concept.
You're pathetically predictable.
I want to start this off by saying this wouldn't surprise me one bit if this ended up coming to fruition, because it is such a Marvel Studios thing to do. To undermine the impact of those characters' death, which was very well done, all for the sake of drumming up interest for their currently stagnant brand. Of course, they would lazily try to go back to what worked before, because that's something that a creatively bankrupt film studio would do.
She doesn't get that it's always worse the second time around.
What they fail to realize is that all of this will mean nothing if the creative isn't right. And that, in fact, has been the MCU's biggest problem for years now. Truthfully, Marvel Studios hasn't put the right people in the right situations to succeed. They place their faith in writers and directors with far less talent than the people they used to work with to write new characters and stories that were intended to continue the MCU's reign of dominance. Marvel Studios was convinced that Carol Danvers, Kamala Khan, and Riri Williams would have the same impact on general audiences that Thor, Tony Stark, and Steve Rogers had.
You serious?
But anyone with a brain would tell you that simply wasn't going to be the case. To be fair, that also could be because Marvel Studios never really truly embraced these characters and gave them a fair chance. They expected audiences to just show up and watch their movies and Disney Plus shows, just because Marvel Studios was above the title. You see, Kevin Feige and Marvel Studios got complacent, and they lost sight of why people enjoyed the MCU to begin with. Did you know that director Nia DaCosta all but abandoned the Marvels somewhere in the middle of post-production, reportedly to go work on her next film? By all accounts, she practically gave up on the film because of the middling reviews that the film was receiving in test screenings. The director of a $250 million film knew in her heart that this film was going to be a failure no matter what.
Don't bother.
Did you know that Oscar-winning actor Mahershala Ali reportedly considered leaving the Blade reboot because of script issues? Allegedly, in one of the versions of the script, Blade was relegated to a fourth lead in his own movie. Something else that Marvel Studios has now become known for.
Why are you the way that you are?
They've since hired a new writer for the project, but it's very clear to me that if a Oscar-winning actor is willing to give up a sizable paycheck just because the studio can't get its together, then there is clearly a bigger problem. A problem that cannot be fixed by simply bringing back characters that people know and love for cheap nostalgia bait. The issue is, and has been for a while now, Marvel Studios' creative process, or lack thereof.
Put some effort into it!
Studio-driven filmmaking may have worked for them for some time, but at some point audiences are going to catch on, and that's going to force you to put in more effort in the projects you're creating. Maybe that involves hiring creators with unique visions instead of hired hands. If Marvel Studios thinks that the return of Robert Downey Jr. and Hugh Jackman is going to save their entire brand, then they have another thing coming. If No Way Home has taught us anything, it's that once that initial hype and that rush of nostalgia for seeing recognizable faces wears off, what we are left with is a mediocre movie at best, and the flaws really start to show through. Great storytelling, or unique storytelling, is how you can save the MCU, but you're never going to be able to do that as long as you keep relying on the past instead of building on the future in a meaningful way.
Y'all be cool. Right on.